Hey, everybody, and welcome to another deep dive with us.
Always exciting.
Today, we're going to be looking at a book called Boundaries in Dating.
Boundaries in dating.
Yeah, by Henry Cloud and John Townsend.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
Have you read this one?
I have not read this one, no, but I am familiar with their work and really appreciate their approach.
Yeah, I think you're going to enjoy this one.
Cool.
We're going to be going through, the whole book and giving you guys some tips and tricks and what we've learned.
Yeah, what we took away from it.
Yeah, exactly. And hopefully, you guys will have some takeaways that can help you in your own dating lives.
For sure.
That's
Because this is really about, laying a foundation for healthy relationships.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about, not just finding a date, but finding like a good relationship.
Yeah, a relationship that's actually going to work for you.
Right.
Long term.
Exactly. And that starts with having good boundaries
Right from the beginning.
right from the beginning.
Because if you don't have those boundaries in place from the start,
You're going to run into problems.
you're going to run into problems down the line.
Yeah. And so the book, starts off right away in chapter 1 talking about why boundaries are so important.
Yeah, and why they're especially important in dating.
Yeah, it's funny how we don't always think about boundaries in dating.
Right, we think about them in other areas of our lives.
Yeah, like with work or with family.
But with dating, it's like, oh, it's all about, the spark and the excitement.
Yeah. And just going with the flow.
But that can be a recipe for disaster
It can be.
if you're not careful.
Yeah. And so Cloud and Townsend,
Mhm.
they really lay it out there. They say that boundaries are like emotional property lines.
I love that analogy.
Yeah, it's so good.
It's so visual.
Yeah, you can really picture it.
It's like, okay, so this is my space.
This is my space.
And this is your space.
And we need to respect each other's space.
Right, and if you don't have those lines,
People can just walk all over you.
yeah, people can just walk all over you and take advantage of you, and you end up feeling resentful and hurt.
Totally. And so they start off with this story of Heather and Todd.
Oh, yeah, I remember Heather and Todd.
Yeah, poor Heather.
Poor Heather.
She was
She was dating Todd for a year.
and she was ready for the next step.
She wanted to, talk about the future.
Right. She wanted to know where things were going.
But he kept dodging the conversation.
Oh yeah, he was not ready.
No, he was not ready to commit.
He was happy just keeping things casual.
And so the book uses this story to show how, a lack of clear communication about what you want and need can lead to feeling frustrated and undervalued.
Exactly. And it's not that Todd was a bad guy.
No, he just wasn't on the same page.
Right. He just wasn't ready for the same things that Heather was.
And so it's important to be upfront about your expectations.
Yeah, you can't just assume that the other person is thinking the same thing that you are.
And it can be tough to have those conversations.
It can be.
It can be awkward and uncomfortable. But it's so much better to have those conversations early on.
Than to just let things fester.
Right. Because if you
I'm
don't.
just going to end up getting hurt.
Exactly.
And that leads perfectly into chapter 2, where they get real about truth and honesty in dating.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Like they say that even small deceptions
Can erode trust.
erode trust,
Yeah,
and
yes.
they break down different types of deception that people use.
Like Karen and Matt.
Karen and Matt.
Oh, gosh.
That was a mess.
Yeah, Karen was.
Enjoying dating Matt.
Right, but she wasn't looking for anything serious.
Right. But she never explicitly said that.
So Matt was thinking, oh, this could be the one.
Right. He was getting all these ideas.
And then she's like, oh, no, I'm not ready for anything serious.
And he's like, what?
Yeah, poor Matt.
I know. And this kind of mixed signal can really sting.
It can be really hurtful.
Yeah, because you're getting these mixed messages and you don't know what to believe.
Right. And then you end up feeling like you can't trust the other person.
Exactly.
Which is not a good foundation for a relationship.
No, it's not. And then, of course, you have the classic hiding romantic intentions under the guise of friendship.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic.
That's a recipe for confusion and hurt feelings.
It is, because you think you're just friends, and then suddenly
Right.
they want to be more than friends.
And it's like
awkward.
awkward, and then
Well, and there's the misrepresenting your past relationships.
yeah, or even who you are,
Or who you are.
like pretending to be someone you're not.
Right, because you think that's what the other person wants.
Exactly. And it's so important to remember that a relationship built on anything less than honesty,
Is bound to crumble.
it is.
It's like building a house on sand.
It's going to fall apart.
It's going to fall apart.
So we really need to be discerning about the people we allow into our lives.
Yes, and pay attention to any inconsistencies between their words and actions.
Exactly like if they say one thing but do another.
Red flag.
Red flag.
Red flag.
All right, chapter 4, we're getting into some,
Juicy stuff?
yeah, the danger of dating to cure loneliness.
Oh, that's a big one.
This one hits home for a lot of people.
I think we've all been there at some point.
Or we just want to be in a relationship.
Just to not be alone.
Yeah, even if it's not the right one.
Yeah.
Just to avoid being alone.
And it's so tempting.
It is.
Because loneliness is a real thing.
It's a real thing, and it hurts.
It hurts and it's scary.
It is. And so the book uses Marcia's story to illustrate this trap.
Poor Marcia.
She kept jumping from one relationship to the next.
Trying to fill that void.
And it's so insightful what the book points out, that this approach actually makes the loneliness worse in the long run.
It does.
It's like you're putting a Band-Aid on a broken bone.
Yeah, it's a temporary fix.
But it's not going to heal the underlying issue.
Right. It's not actually addressing the root of the problem.
So instead of looking outward for someone to complete us,
We need to look inward.
we need to strengthen our relationship with ourselves,
With God, if that's part of your life.
with our friends and family.
With our hobbies and interests.
Yeah, like investing in those areas is what truly addresses the root of loneliness.
Exactly. It's about building a life that you love.
So that you're not just desperately seeking someone to fill the void.
You're coming from a place of wholeness and readiness for a genuine connection.
I love that.
It's so important.
And then chapter 5 encourages us to look back at our past dating patterns.
Ooh, the past.
The past.
It can be scary.
It can be, but it's not about dwelling on the past or blaming anyone.
It's about learning from those experiences.
Exactly, recognizing those red flags we might have ignored.
Or the compromises we made that ultimately led to unhappiness.
Right, and it's so easy to fall into familiar patterns.
It is.
But this chapter really pushes you to break free from those cycles.
Yeah, you have to be intentional about it.
And they acknowledge that confronting your past can be tough.
It can be.
Maybe there's immaturity,
Fear of the unknown.
fear of repeating those mistakes.
But it's crucial to do it.
Cloud and Townsend are adamant that this self-awareness is crucial.
It is because it empowers you to make healthier choices moving forward.
Right, you realize that repeating past mistakes isn't inevitable.
You have the power to change the script.
Yes, you do.
You're not doomed to repeat the same patterns over and over again.
It's so empowering.
It is.
So we've talked about why boundaries are important. We've talked about honesty. We've talked about not dating to cure loneliness. We've talked about learning from the past. And now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of
What to look for.
what to look for in a partner.
What are your deal breakers?
What are your non-negotiables?
What are you willing to be flexible on?
And so chapter 6 gets super practical.
Yeah, this is where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, it helps you figure out what you can and can't live with in a partner.
They break it down into 4 categories.
4 categories.
Limiting preferences.
Important preference.
Important preferences.
Minor imperfections.
Minor imperfections.
Minor imperfections.
And major imperfections.
And major imperfections.
So let's start with those limiting preferences.
Okay, limiting preferences.
Okay. These are those deal breakers that might actually be too rigid.
Ooh, too rigid.
Yeah, like maybe you'll only date someone who's over 6 feet tall.
Okay, yeah. Height can be a big one for some people.
Or has a specific job.
Yeah, or makes a certain amount of money.
Or has a certain level of education.
Right, and those things might be preventing you from meeting some amazing people.
They might be.
Yeah, because you're limiting yourself so much.
You're cutting out a whole pool of potential partners.
Who might be perfect for you.
Just because they don't meet this arbitrary criteria.
Exactly. So it's important to really examine those limiting preferences.
And ask yourself, are these really deal breakers?
Or am I just being too picky?
Right, because sometimes we get so caught up in our list of must-haves.
That we miss out on the good stuff.
Exactly. And then there are important preferences.
Okay, important preferences.
These are the things that really matter for long-term compatibility.
Okay, so give me some examples.
Shared values.
Shared values, that's a big one.
Similar life goals.
Yeah, like do you both want kids or do you both not want kids?
Right. Do you both want to travel the world or do you both want to settle down in a small town?
Exactly, and a compatible sense of humor.
That's important.
Yeah, because you got to be able to laugh together.
You got to be able to laugh together.
Right, and if you're constantly butting heads or you just don't find each other funny,
That's going to be a problem.
yeah, that's not going to be a fun relationship.
Yeah, it's not.
So shared values, similar life goals,
Yeah,
compatible sense of humor.
those are the important preferences.
Got it.
Then we have minor imperfections.
Minor imperfections.
These are the little quirks we all have.
We all have them.
Yeah, like being messy or interrupting sometimes.
Yeah, or always running late.
Or forgetting to take out the trash.
Right. Those are things that you can probably overlook.
You can probably overlook them, or a partner might be willing to work on.
Yeah, if you bring it to their attention in a loving way.
Right. Like, hey,
Right.
honey, I noticed that you always leave your socks on the floor.
Would you mind putting them in the hamper? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure, no problem.
No problem.
That's a minor imperfection.
Right.
But then we have the big ones,
The major imperfections.
the major imperfections.
These are the red flags.
With flags.
That we really shouldn't ignore.
We shouldn't ignore them.
So give me some examples.
Dishonesty,
Dishonesty, that's a big one.
controlling behavior,
Yeah, if they're trying to control your every move,
or blatant disrespect for your boundaries,
if they're constantly crossing the line,
even after you've told them to stop.
these are things that have the potential to be truly damaging to a relationship.
They can be deal breakers.
They can be.
And it's important to be honest with yourself about whether these are things that you can live with,
Because sometimes we try to convince ourselves that we can change someone.
or that they'll eventually come around.
But the truth is,
People rarely change.
unless they really want to,
And if they're not respecting your boundaries now,
they're probably not going to start respecting them later.
so it's important to pay attention to those red flags and to not ignore them.
Exactly.
All right, so we've got our deal breakers, we've got our non-negotiables, we've got our red flags.
Now what?
Chapter 7 drops this gem of advice.
Okay. I'm listening.
Don't fall in love with someone you wouldn't be friends with.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right.
It's so simple.
But it's so true.
Yeah, it really makes you think.
And they tell Stephanie's story.
Oh, yeah, Stephanie. She was...
More drawn to a guy with a bunch of issues
Oh, yeah. He was a bad boy.
than to a good friend of hers.
Who was a really good guy.
Yeah, a really nice guy.
But she just wasn't attracted to him.
It really makes you think, why are we sometimes attracted to people who aren't good for us?
That's the million-dollar question.
Why do we do that to ourselves?
I think sometimes it's because we're looking for excitement.
Yeah, we want the drama.
We want the drama.
We want the roller coaster ride?
Yeah, but that's not sustainable.
No, it's not.
And it usually ends in heartbreak.
So Cloud and Townsend, they suggest that if you only see romantic potential in people who wouldn't make good friends.
You might need to examine your attraction patterns a bit closer.
Yeah, like why am I drawn to these people?
What is it about them that I find so appealing?
Are you confusing chemistry with compatibility?
That's a good question.
Are you looking for a project rather than a partner?
Yeah. Are you trying to fix them?
Or are you trying to save them?
Because that's not your job.
It's not your job to save someone.
No.
You can't change someone.
Unless they want to change themselves.
Exactly. And so if you're constantly finding yourself attracted to people who are bad for you,
It's a sign that you need to do some inner work.
yeah, figure out why you're drawn to these types of people.
And what you can do to change that pattern.
And then Chapter 8 flips that idea around
Yeah.
and cautions against blurring the lines between friendship and romance,
Ooh, that's interesting.
especially when loneliness is a factor.
Yeah, because when you're lonely...
You're more likely to see potential romantic partners everywhere.
Yeah.
Even in your friends.
And we've all seen this happen. Like
Yeah.
Natalie and Spencer,
Natalie and Spencer.
they were friends.
And
Natalie started to develop feelings for Spencer,
Right.
but Spencer might have been using the relationship to deal with his own loneliness.
Right. He wasn't really interested in Natalie romantically.
He just needed someone to talk to.
Someone to hang out with.
And Natalie was there.
So it created this imbalance where Natalie's needs weren't being met.
Right, she was giving more than she was receiving.
And it's a reminder that idealizing a friend can be a way to avoid facing our own needs.
It can be.
Like we project all these qualities onto them
That they may not actually possess,
and we put them on a pedestal.
that they can't live up to.
And so it's important to be honest with yourself about your motivations in relationships.
Yeah. Are you truly attracted to this person?
Or are you just afraid of being alone?
That's a tough question.
It is, but it's an important one to ask yourself.
It is.
Speaking of tricky dynamics,
Hit me with it.
Chapter 9 tackles the myth of opposites attract.
Ooh, that's a classic.
It's such a romantic notion
It is.
that we're drawn to people who are complete opposites.
It's like the yin and the yang.
Yeah, but Cloud and Townsend caution that while differences can add spark,
Can
relying on a partner to complete you
lead to unhealthy dependency.
and resentment.
Exactly, because you're expecting them to fill in all the gaps in your own personality or life experience.
Which is a lot of pressure to put on someone.
It is.
And it can lead to disappointment when they inevitably fall short.
Because no one can complete you. Only you can complete you.
That's a good point.
Yeah, you have to be whole and complete on your own.
Before you can be in a healthy relationship.
Exactly.
And so they suggest that sometimes we're attracted to opposites to avoid facing our own growth areas.
That's interesting.
Yeah, like maybe we're subconsciously looking for someone to handle the things we don't want to deal with ourselves.
Like our finances
Yeah.
or our emotional baggage.
Or our messy apartment.
Right.
But that's not fair to the other person.
It's not.
And it's not healthy for the relationship.
So if you find yourself constantly attracted to people who are your complete opposite, it's a sign that you might need to do some self-reflection
Figure out what it is that you're trying to avoid.
and work on those areas within yourself.
Chapter 10. Oh boy. Chapter 10.
This is a tough one.
It's all about the dangers of constantly adapting to please your partner.
Ooh, yeah, the people
A
pleaser.
people pleaser.
We all know someone like that.
We all do. And the story of Carrie and Steve paints a vivid picture of this.
Oh, yeah, poor
They're
Carrie.
constantly bending over backwards to accommodate Steve
Trying to make him happy.
and creating an illusion of compatibility.
Yeah, because it seemed like they were perfect for each other.
On the surface,
But underneath,
it was all fake.
it was all fake.
And as the relationship went on, Carrie started to feel resentful.
Yeah, because her needs and desires were always taking a back seat.
And when she finally tried to assert herself,
The relationship fell apart.
yeah, because it was built on a foundation of lies.
It was.
And so it's a powerful reminder that healthy relationships thrive on authenticity,
Yes.
not constant adaptation.
You have to be yourself.
You have to be yourself
You can't pretend to be someone you're not,
just to please your partner,
because eventually the mask will slip.
and they'll see the real you.
And if they don't like the real you, then they're not the right person for you.
Exactly.
You deserve to be with someone who loves you for who you are.
Not who you pretend to be.
Couldn't agree more.
So that's a wrap for part 1 of our deep dive into boundaries in dating.
Wow, that was a lot of information.
We covered so much ground,
We did.
from understanding why boundaries are crucial.
To recognizing those common dating traps.
And I hope you guys are taking notes.
Because this stuff is important.
It is, and it could really make a difference in your dating life.
So stay tuned for part 2, where we'll delve even deeper into specific types of boundaries.
And how to set them effectively.
It's going to be good.
It is.
Can't wait.
All right, welcome back for part 2 of our deep dive into boundaries in dating.
We're ready to keep going.
I'm feeling so much more empowered just from that first part.
I know, right? It's amazing how much practical wisdom is packed into this book.
It really is. And, I'm realizing that I need to be more intentional about setting boundaries in my own dating life.
Me too. I
And-
think we all do.
Yeah, and chapter 15 really hit home for me.
Saying no to disrespect.
Yes, that's one.
It's so important.
And the book makes it clear that you deserve to be treated with respect.
Absolutely.
Any behavior that crosses that line
It's unacceptable.
unacceptable.
You don't have to tolerate it.
No, you don't. And they share this story of Cindy and Craig.
Oh, yeah, Cindy and Craig.
And I think a lot of people will relate to Cindy's experience,
Yeah, I think so too.
where she's initially drawn to Craig's intelligence and charm.
He sounds good on paper.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
The red flags start popping up.
Oh, yeah.
He makes disrespectful comments to waitstaff.
Oh, no.
I know. And he flirts with other women in front of her.
Double no.
And even though it makes her uncomfortable,
She tries to brush it off.
I've been there.
Me too.
It's so easy to do that, especially early on in a relationship.
Yeah, you don't want to rock the boat.
You're like, maybe it's not a big deal.
Yeah, maybe I'm overreacting.
But the book emphasizes that disrespect, no matter how small it might seem,
Is a boundary violation.
and it should never be tolerated.
Never.
It's about recognizing your worth
Your worth?
and refusing to settle for anything less than respectful treatment.
You deserve to be treated with respect.
And Cloud and Townsend, they encourage you to confront disrespect directly
Yes.
and to set clear consequences.
So how do you do that?
How do you actually set boundaries?
That's the question, isn't it?
It can feel intimidating, especially if you're not used to asserting yourself.
Definitely.
But Cloud and Townsend offer some helpful advice.
Lay it on us.
They say the first step is to be clear and direct about what you need.
Okay. No beating around the bush.
No beating around the bush, no sugarcoating things.
Just say it straight up.
Say it straight up.
I like it.
They also suggest using I statements to express your feelings and needs.
Like, I feel disrespected when you do this.
Exactly, instead of saying, you're always late.
Which can come across as blaming.
Yeah.
Try saying, I feel disrespected when you're late for our dates.
It's about owning your experience.
Not blaming your partner.
Right, and that can make the conversation feel less accusatory.
It can.
Now, I imagine some people might worry about their partner's reaction.
Yeah, not everyone is going to be happy to hear about their shortcomings.
That's true.
But the book emphasizes that you're not asking for permission to set boundaries,
You're simply stating what you need.
to feel safe and respected in the relationship,
It's about prioritizing your well-being.
and not being afraid to stand your ground.
They also highlight the importance of consistency.
Consistency.
It's not enough to state your boundaries once,
You have to enforce them.
consistently,
Otherwise, your partner might start testing the waters.
or take advantage of your willingness to compromise.
And remember, setting boundaries isn't about controlling your partner.
Or changing who they are.
It's about creating a safe and respectful space.
For both of you to be yourself.
And to grow.
So let's talk about specific types of boundaries you can set.
Okay, I'm ready.
What are some examples that come to mind?
Well, one of the most fundamental boundaries is around your time.
Time.
Yes, your time is precious,
It is.
and you need to be protective of it.
So what does that look like in a dating relationship?
It's about being clear about your availability
Okay.
and not letting your partner dictate your schedule.
Or pressure you into doing things you're not comfortable with.
Exactly.
Like if they expect you to be available at the drop of a hat.
Or get upset when you have plans with friends or family.
Yeah, that's not cool.
No, it's not.
So protecting your time.
Making sure that you're not sacrificing your own needs or commitments to please your partner.
That's key.
Another essential boundary is around communication.
Communication.
That's a big one.
It's because communication is the foundation of any relationship.
It is how you connect with each other,
How you share your thoughts and feelings.
how you work through problems
And so it's about feeling safe to express your thoughts and feelings.
without fear of judgment or criticism,
Being with someone who genuinely listens to you,
respects your opinions.
even if they don't always agree with them.
That's important.
Yeah, because you're not always going to agree on everything.
No, you're not.
But you should be able to have those disagreements.
In a respectful way.
Cloud and Townsend also emphasize setting boundaries around negative communication patterns.
Like sarcasm.
Sarcasm, criticism.
Hurtful language.
Even if they say they're just joking,
Yeah, the just joking excuse.
it's not okay.
It's not.
It's important to let them know that that kind of communication is not acceptable to you.
You don't have to tolerate it.
And if they're not willing to make an effort to change their communication style.
It might be a sign that the relationship isn't a good fit.
So another crucial area is physical boundaries.
Physical boundaries.
Being clear about what you're comfortable with physically.
And not letting anyone pressure you into doing anything that feels wrong.
Or violates your values.
Exactly.
And it's not just about sex.
It can also include things like hugging, kissing.
Kissing hands.
It's about honoring your own comfort level.
And being assertive about what you're ready for.
It's also important to remember that physical boundaries can evolve over time.
That's a good point.
What you're comfortable with at the beginning of a relationship.
Might change as you get to know each other better.
The key is to communicate openly and honestly with your partner.
And to respect each other's needs.
So communication is key.
Always.
Let's talk about financial boundaries.
Oh yeah, money.
Money can be a big source of conflict in relationships.
It can be.
So it's important to have open and honest conversations about money.
From the beginning.
Set expectations around spending and saving.
Make sure both partners feel secure and respected in terms of finances. I've seen so many relationships struggle because of financial issues.
Me too.
Like if one partner is constantly borrowing money from the other.
Or making major financial decisions without consulting them.
That can breed resentment.
It can.
And it's important to be on the same page financially.
Working towards common goals.
Being transparent about your financial situation and expectations from the start can prevent a lot of heartache down the road.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget about emotional boundaries.
Emotional boundaries, those are important.
These are often the trickiest to define and enforce,
They are?
but they're just as important as any other type of boundary.
What do emotional boundaries look like?
It's about protecting yourself from emotional dumping,
Manipulation.
any behavior that leaves you feeling drained or disrespected,
It's about being with someone who respects your feelings.
and doesn't use you as a therapist.
Or an emotional punching bag.
It's also about knowing when to step back and take care of your own emotional well-being,
You're not responsible for fixing your partner's problems.
or taking on their emotional baggage,
You have to prioritize your own emotional health.
and make sure your needs are being met in the relationship.
So we've covered a lot of different types of boundaries.
Time, communication, physical, financial, emotional.
What happens when those boundaries are crossed?
It's going to happen at some point.
It is. We're all human.
We make mistakes.
And the book acknowledges that.
Just because your partner crosses a boundary
doesn't automatically mean they're a bad person.
Or that the relationship is doomed,
It could be a simple misunderstanding.
or lapse in judgment.
But it's still crucial to address the issue.
Don't just sweep it under the rug.
Or pretend it didn't happen.
Communicate with your partner.
Let them know their behavior crossed a line.
How it made you feel.
Use those I statements.
Express your experience without blaming or attacking them,
It's about focusing on the impact of their actions.
rather than labeling them as a bad person.
They also suggest being specific about the behavior you're addressing.
So don't just say, you were disrespectful.
Explain exactly what they did or said that felt disrespectful.
So they understand what they need to work on.
It's also important to reiterate the boundary
Remind them what you need and expect from them in the future.
and be prepared to set consequences if the behavior continues.
Consequences.
Yes, consequences.
Like what?
Could be anything from taking a break from the relationship,
To ending it altogether,
depending on the severity of the boundary violation,
and whether they demonstrate a willingness to change. So it's about protecting yourself.
and not settling for a relationship that doesn't align with your values and needs.
The goal is to create a safe and respectful relationship.
And sometimes that means walking away from someone who isn't willing to meet you halfway.
It's a tough decision,
It can be.
but ultimately it's about prioritizing your own well-being.
Knowing that you deserve to be in a relationship where your boundaries are honored.
Setting boundaries is an act of self-love.
It is.
It's not selfish at all.
No, it's about valuing yourself.
And not settling for relationships that make you unhappy or unfulfilled.
And in the long run,
It's much easier to address these issues early on.
than to let them fester and grow into bigger problems down the line.
So much less painful to end a relationship that's not working.
Than to stay in one that's slowly chipping away at your sense of self.
So before we move on to part 3,
Let's take a moment to reflect.
what are some boundaries you might need to set in your own life?
What are some behaviors you're no longer willing to tolerate?
How can you communicate those boundaries to your partner in a clear and respectful way?
These are all important questions to consider.
And remember, it's okay to ask for help if you're struggling.
There are so many resources available.
Therapists, relationship coaches, supportive friends and family members.
You don't have to navigate this journey alone.
So let's dive into part 3,
Where we'll explore the spiritual dimension of boundaries.
that intriguing detention hall concept from chapter 18.
It's going to be good.
I'm ready. All right, welcome back for the final part of our deep dive into boundaries in dating.
I feel like we've covered so much already.
I know, me too. But I'm excited for this last part.
Me too.
Because we're getting into some really interesting stuff.
Like the detention hall.
Yeah. Chapter 18 introduces this concept of the detention hall for bad behavior.
I love that phrase.
It's so catchy.
It is.
What exactly does that mean?
Well, Cloud and Townsend, they emphasize that boundaries aren't always about ending relationships. They can also be a way to create space for growth and change within a relationship.
So instead of immediately breaking up with someone when they mess up,
You're suggesting setting consequences.
that encouraged them to reflect on their actions and make amends.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
It's about giving your partner a chance to demonstrate that they're willing to respect your boundaries
Okay.
and work towards a healthier relationship.
So this wouldn't apply to every situation, right?
Right.
Like if someone cheats on you,
That's probably a deal breaker.
yeah,
But if it's something like,
like they forgot your birthday,
or they said something hurtful,
but they're genuinely remorseful,
and they're willing to change,
then maybe the detention hall is a good option.
it's about recognizing that everyone makes mistakes,
We're all human.
and that sometimes those mistakes can actually become opportunities for growth and deeper connection.
So how do you actually go about setting up this detention hall?
The key is to be clear about the consequences of crossing your boundaries.
Okay.
And those consequences need to be meaningful to your partner.
Not just empty threats. It's about creating a situation where they have to face the impact of their actions.
And make a conscious choice to do better.
So can you give me an example?
Sure, let's say your partner consistently cancels plans at the last minute.
That's so frustrating.
It is.
It makes you feel like you're not a priority.
Exactly.
So what would you do?
You could tell them that if it happens again, you're going to take a break from the relationship for a week.
A week
Yeah.
to reassess whether it's still a good fit
It gives them a clear consequence.
and a chance to reflect on their behavior and decide if they're willing to make a change.
But just saying it isn't enough.
You have to follow through.
If you don't follow through with the consequences, your partner might not take your boundaries seriously.
So consistency is key.
It is.
But this process can be challenging.
It can be.
For both partners.
The person who crossed the boundary might feel ashamed or defensive,
Right.
and the person who set the boundary might feel hurt or resentful.
So it's important to approach these conversations with empathy and understanding
It's about working together as a team.
to build a stronger, healthier relationship.
Not about winning or losing.
But finding a resolution that honors both of your needs and creates a more loving and respectful dynamic.
Now, what happens if, even after going through this detention hall process,
Your partner continues to cross your boundaries.
that's a tough situation.
It is.
But sometimes the detention hall can actually lead to the end of a relationship if your partner isn't willing to change their behavior,
Or respect your boundaries.
even after facing consequences.
Might be time to walk away.
That's a difficult decision,
It is.
but it's a sign of self-respect.
It shows that you're not willing to settle for a relationship that consistently makes you feel unhappy or unfulfilled.
You deserve to be with someone who treats you well and honors your needs.
One thing that really struck me in this book
What's that?
was how they emphasized the spiritual dimension of boundaries.
Yeah, it's not something you hear often in typical dating advice.
It's refreshing.
It is,
And they suggest that surrendering your dating life to a higher power
whatever that may be for you.
can help you make choices that are aligned with your values.
Avoid those decisions based on fear or desperation.
It's about recognizing that you're not alone in this journey.
Trusting that you're being guided toward the right relationships.
And that can bring so much peace and clarity.
It can,
It's not just about setting boundaries with potential partners.
but also setting boundaries with your own desires and expectations.
Letting go of the need to control everything.
Trusting that the right relationship will unfold in its own time.
Being open to the possibility that the right relationship might not look the way you initially imagined it.
Sometimes the most fulfilling relationships come from unexpected places.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into boundaries in dating,
I want to circle back to the idea of self-love.
self-love,
That's the foundation of it all.
it really is.
Setting boundaries is an act of self-love.
It's about honoring your needs, your values, your worth.
Creating relationships that are truly fulfilling and life-giving.
Not draining or depleting.
Remember, you have the right to be treated with respect,
To feel safe and loved.
to have your boundaries honored.
And when you start setting those boundaries, you might be surprised by the positive impact it has.
On your relationships and your overall well-being.
So if there's one thing you take away from this deep dive,
Let it be this.
you are worthy of love and respect.
You have the power to create relationships that reflect that worth.
Thank you for joining us on this journey into boundaries in dating.
May your future relationships be filled with love, respect, and healthy boundaries.
Until next time,